Thank you for listening to We Speak Dispatch, sponsored by your friends at Watson Consoles.
And welcome back to another episode of We Speak Dispatch. Thanks for joining us today. We are talking mainly to those who are new supervisors or even those who are aspiring to be supervisors. Not that if you already are one or have one under your belt, this isn't for you, but we have a special guest today, Nick, who's joining us as a new supervisor coming upon a year. But before we get there, all of us who are regular cast members have been supervisors in our profession. So Doug, how's it going?
Good. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Good.
Thank you.
And Joe?
It's going phenomenal. It's a little cold here, but we're doing great.
Excellent. And Leslie, what's by you?
Everything is fabulous. Can't wait. I'm interested to hear Nick's story because
Me too.
I can remember back to the depths of my mind when I was a new supervisor, and I don't remember smiling as much as Nick was. So I want to hear his story.
It hasn't been a year yet, so you know.
Yeah, that's
right. Nick, go ahead. Tell us about the smile.
It's I love the job. I've been dispatching since 2004. I came on to my current agency back in 2014. So it's I'm coming up on 9 years. I love it, and we had some supervisors. It was my direct supervisor. She left to move to another agency, so there was an opening. So they began the long, tough process of trying to hire, and they test, and it was actually a long process.
What is the process to become a supervisor where you are? What is the process?
I was going to ask,
so application, all the requirements that they're looking for, various certifications, things like that. They had a written test, which the results came back that night, which I was pretty shocked at. Then once they set up the interview, which that took a while, and then those results a few days past that. Unfortunately, the gentleman who actually was promoted, he ended up passing away. So it's kind of a sad situation.
Wow.
And then
how bad did you want that job? My God.
I happen to be number 2. So
wow.
Yeah. So that's kind of how that came about.
So a lot of different agencies have different processes for new dispatchers and supervisors. The test, 2 questions to that. 1, was it written? And 2, was it something developed in-house or from like a commercial vendor?
There was a written exam, Scantron, that kind of thing. Okay. It was from a company. It was not in-house. However, it wasn't supervisory related. It was more of it was more of a general process, I think, general thoughts. There was mapping questions. It was law enforcement geared. So where do you send an officer to this address and that kind of thing. But then there was very few supervisory questions on the exam.
Really? Do you feel now that you got it, I'm certain you think, yeah, the test was very valid. That's awesome. But truly looking back, if you had to look, do you think it was a good assessment for the job you hold today?
No, I think it could have been a more supervisory questions on the test. But I mean, I know our bosses didn't have any input. It was all done through human resources, and they contract with the company. So I think it's the same company that they contract for the initial exam for beginners.
You mentioned it was like law enforcement. So some agencies are their own. Does your center fall under a law enforcement department?
Yeah, we're housed out of the police department. I report directly to the police chief. He's my boss. However, we dispatch all 3 agencies. So,
was the interview that you had, was that related to supervision?
Sorry.
That the interview was, that was all of our command staff, all the chiefs and captains. That was around supervisory, our supervisory experience, any other certifications that we might have related to the job. So that's kind of where they brought it back into being a supervisor, the exam.
So
What
what's been
kind
the
of-
biggest challenge? Because
Yeah.
I know when I promoted, it was from internal, so that buddy to boss change. Was that
Yep,
difficult?
that's the biggest one. Yeah, it's I was moved to a different squad once I was promoted, and is sort of, I guess, where the need was. And you're dealing with people who also were testing at the same time for the job. So that's been, some were more senior to me, and that was a little challenge to.
So Nick, tell us, did you have any training when you finally got promoted? Did you have any training about how to actually be a supervisor?
Yeah, I was sent to a online. It was like maybe an 8-hour class just one day, leadership training. The town a few years back instituted something where they're sending all of their supervisors for the entire town through this program.
Okay.
Regardless of how long you've been a supervisor or not.
Yeah.
So, there's 4 sessions throughout. I don't know. I think it's like once a month kind of thing. So that's an additional training.
And with any internal promotions, Nick, I always wonder, since you obviously knew how to do the dispatching job and you were there, what percentage of your new role is actual supervision versus dispatching?
Our supervisors are, we're working supervisors. So, that part of it still remains. There's the scheduling part. We got hit with some COVID round came through and took out a couple of squads. So that was scheduling nightmare, trying to deal with all that. But yeah, I think scheduling is probably the most, is the biggest. We have our policies, stuff like that, as far as what to do. Decisions that need to be made. We just fall back on that. We also are with our, we have a sergeant that's right on the other side of our wall that works pretty close with us. So we always have that as a resource too.
And after your first year, what's the one piece of advice you would give to an internal person that's promoting? You would tell the person that's going to promote, how would you sum it up and what would you tell them?
Oh, that's a tough question. I would say sometimes it's a lonely road. You have to make decisions. You can't make those decisions based on who you're friends with or that you've worked with. You have to sort of set that aside and put your supervisor hat on and make that decision. And you hope, depending on what the situation is, that someone's not going to get too offended by what you're doing. But ultimately, it does weigh on you. You're the one that has to make the decision. So.
Wow,
that's a great.
What would you, not necessarily to opposite, but what's your biggest success or positive thing that happened over the last year in the new role?
Well, when I was promoted, I decided to follow one of our deputy chiefs that got promoted. When he was promoted to deputy chief, he said, "I'm going to take 90 days and I'm not going to do anything." Obviously, he has a little bit more of the changing power as a deputy chief than I do, but he just wanted to sort of settle into the role. So I had decided that's what I wanted to do. However, was not the case, not what others felt. They basically handed and said, "Can you rewrite our training program?" So I had to go and right out of the gate, create this a new training program.
How did you do that? How did you come up with I think this is a good idea for training and liability concerns and all that stuff?
Yeah, we modeled it. We had the system in place. I just made some changes to it. We modeled it off of APCO training program. So, we used some of that. Some things just having been through the training, what was there. And then I was actually one of 2 trainers out that weren't supervisors. The supervisors, it's required, but there was only 2 of us that weren't. So I basically, having gone through that as a trainer, where I thought improvements needed to be made. So I just sort of incorporated all that.
When was the last time the program was updated at the PSAT?
It's been there up until I took it over, it was the same program. So
1830.
Okay.
yeah.
So do you have plans, like when, so you got promoted and I love that, you know, you decided, hey, for 90 days, because, you know, we joke on this and we've said it hundreds of times, you know, there's two things dispatchers hate: change and things staying the same. So I think, you know, that's super smart just to kind of let things settle. But are there things in your mind that now that you're in this role, you know, you've got the ability to make some changes? What are some of those things?
One of the biggest things is I have more of a say, so to speak. We're actually renovating our center. So we're working through companies and trying to come up with the designs that I would not have been in if I wasn't a supervisor. We're trying to do that. We're trying to find different ways of lifting morale. We've been so short-staffed, and you know, we're trying to hire. We've had some people retire. We test, but we can't get people to test, and so I'm sure it's something that it's across the country that way.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm trying to find
Everybody's
different ways of lifting morale, you know, within our center. So
Which
Yeah,
test
Have
are
you
you
been-
using?
Go ahead, Joe.
Which entrance exam are you using? Which entrance exam are you using?
you know, I'm not sure what it is. Again, we pretty much off as far as our entire department. The human resources, again, I'm pretty sure they have a standing contract with this, whatever this company is, and they just get the materials, and you know, there's a computer portion of it, a written exam. I've sat in as a supervisor, I've sat in on a couple of rounds of interviews. You know, we just finished back at the end of the year, actually, with 3 new hires. So they made it through the program, and now we're sort of adjusting to them being on the, you know,
That's
actually
huge.
on the line.
Yeah.
So
That's big. That's really big.
Staffing is an issue all over the world. I mean,
Yeah.
we've talked to people from Saudi Arabia, same thing. It's staffing. But what did your agency? I mean, I know you said you had those classes and stuff. And one thing that I just did a leadership class over in Memphis, and a lot of them were talking about, we had training on how to like do policy and how to do these things. But as far as dealing with people one-on-one and having that connection, building that connection, very little training in that. People are like told, just get along with people. Well, that doesn't work. I mean,
right.
do you have anything like that? Have you had any kind of training in that kind of thing?
The classes that I'm taking, it's kind of the downside is I wish that there were some training classes geared towards being a dispatch supervisor. These are just more general supervision classes. You know, we're dealing with someone who works at the library, you know, to police sergeants, that kind of thing. So, you know, they're kind of all over the map.
There are classes available to specifically dispatch stuff, and I'm not saying anything. There's one right behind me, but also, are you thinking about going to any like conferences or anything like that? Since you're in supervisor role now, are you going to try to go to any conferences?
I would like to. Yeah, I would like to. It's I'm sure, again, the same country, you had to juggle doing those types of things and also being at home. So trying to juggle all of that and making that all work could be tough. But I would like
valuable information at these conferences if you ever go to them. I mean, if you go and you use it for what it's intended for, is this exchange of knowledge. It's great. I mean, that's where you learn so much about whatever it is you're doing from lots of people in the business. So it's kind of a big thing. So I'd recommend it.
And you did mention, Nick, that some of the courses basically got everybody in the township together. It wasn't just dispatch specific. Having taken county classes myself, to me, I do find value in that. It can reaffirm the practices that we have that we think are either outdated or non-conforming or just hogwash are actually better than a lot of other departments. On the flip side, it could say, ooh, I can't believe we don't do that. And you kind of pull from those ideas that you can implement. So I think to speak to what Doug was saying about the interpersonal, which is a hard skill, I argue it is not a soft skill, of having one-on-one interaction is something that could be learned either specific to dispatch or not. I think one of the big things is just talking with folks, and what is just walking around. I don't know how big your floor is, your comm center floor is, but just talking with people. Do you work days, mids, eves?
We work both. It rotates
Oh,
through,
okay. Okay.
week
You
of
got time.
days and then week of evenings. So
Oh, so you got time to chat and everything. All right.
yeah.
Well,
yeah.
any last, we're at the mark of around 15 or so minutes. Any last words that you have, Nick, for those aspiring to be supervisors?
Just, I think if you really do feel it's something that you are led to do, and I say don't be scared of throwing your hat in the ring. Try, and again, like I said before, sometimes it can be a lonely road, but stick to what you know, what you believe, and you'll be fine.
Now
Was this
listen,
your
Nick,
first
we're
time
going to
going
touch
for
base
it?
with you again in the future. If we touch
Sure.
base with you and you say, "Oh yeah, I'd stop being a supervisor," I'm be like, "Oh hell."
No, I don't think that's going to happen.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks, Nick, a lot. Thank Nick for joining us today and sharing your experience. And it's about some highs and lows and just the learning all together, because it's another constant road of learning, even in that road.
Appreciate it.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. Glad it worked
Glad to
out.
have you back again. Thank you.
In less than a year.
Of course.
That's right.
Thank you for listening to We Speak Dispatch, sponsored by your friends at Watson Consoles.